evening. My name is Nur Fakia binti Azman. My metric number is 244233. Today, I will present about our group assignment presentation, which is the Sustainable Development Goals of Goals 13. And I will present the introduction first. The Sustainable Development Goals were introduced at United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development at Rio de Janeiro on 2012. This goal objectives was to meet the acute political, environmental and economical challenges to meet the overload of our world. Before SDG was existed, MDG was first introduced in 2000 to approach the indignity of poverty and was replacing by the SDGs. In December 2000, the United Nations gathered all leaders of 189 countries to endorse the Millennium Declaration. They committed to achieve a set of 8 measurable goals. These include from overcoming the problem of hunger and extreme poverty to advocating the gender equality and child mortality by the date of 2015. In 2015, the United Nations have been discussing a new post-agenda of 2015 as MDGs will come to its end. They focus on establishing a sustainable world where our social understanding, stable environment and development of economy was valued. In June 2012, the Rio 20 conferences were held at Rio de Janeiro. The objectives of these conferences was to develop a new set of sustainable development goals which better the MDGs and fit into a global development. The UN General Assembly Open Working Group (OWG) suggested a document of 17 goals of SDGs in July 2014 and suppressing the importance of it. In September 2015, the General Assembly approved it and set a new development agenda of new SDGs for 2015 until 2030 in this document. The 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals are: first, no poverty; second, zero hunger; third, good health; fourth, quality education; fifth, gender equality; sixth, clean water and sanitation; 7. Renewable energy; 8. Good jobs and economic growth; 9. Industry, innovation and infrastructure; 10. Reduce inequalities; 11. Sustainable cities and communities; 12. Responsibilities consumption; 13. Climate action; 14. Life below water; 15. Life on land; 16. Peace and justice; and the last one is 17. Partnership for goals. And in this presentation, we'll be focusing on the goals 13, which is climate change.
My part is progress of info of goal 13 in the year 2016. As we all know how bad climate change, it is one of the biggest threat to the development of place and in a global scale. And therefore, a lot of international level corporations in building resilience and preventing these problems are going on very well. And this includes the Paris Agreement, which was signed on the 22nd April 2016 by 175 United Nations member states. This is one of the biggest call to actually to stop or to reduce the speed of the climate change, because the very basic aims of the Paris agreements are aimed in decreasing the speed of the weather change, to fasten the actions and investments, and as well as carrying out steps needed for a sustainable low carbon future ahead. If we take a look at the climate change and how terrible the effects are, a statistics by a famous organization in United Nations shows that between the year 1990 to 2013, Around 1.6 million people and more have been reported to die in globally reported catastrophic tragedies. These are mainly caused by the climate change. And more deaths are happening every year and it's increasing. And these very things lead all the countries, almost all the countries, to actually step up their efforts in actually tackling the climate change process. Until April 2016, 161 different intended nationally decided contributions were recorded by UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And among that, 137 of them have included a set of modification components on how they will be going in about their intended national decided contribution. Many of the countries around the world have resorted to adaptations as the main climate change priority because they know that we can't stop the problem but we can adapt to it.
Now I will explain about the progress and info for 2017. In 2017, 1.1 degrees centigrade over the pre-industrial period has been set as another record. Dryness conditions have occurred in most parts of the world and create a more serious phenomenon in El Nino phenomena in the statement. Within this year, environmental carbon dioxide level additionally achieved a record top 400 sessions for every million. The parties to the Paris Agreement are ready to communicate, plan and keep up progressive broadly decided commitment. 7 developing countries effectively finished and displayed their first national adaptation plan on 20 April 2017 because of climate change. With the ongoing natural disasters have led to an increase in the number of deaths, although disaster risk reduction strategies are being implemented. For the progress and info 2018, it was the hottest in record and was 1.1 degrees Celsius above the pre-modern time. The statistic is increased continuously and made the world to experience rising sea levels, increasing concentration of greenhouse gases and extreme weather conditions. 9 April 2018, 175 parties that have approved the Paris Agreement and 168 parties presented the country-defined first contribution to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat. However, 10 developing countries effectively finished and introduced their first national adaptation plan to react to weather change.
So next, I would like to talk about the target and indicators for our Sustainable Development Goal 13. Founded by the Interagency and Expert Group on SDG Indicators, the Global Indicator Scheme was consented to and seen as a pragmatic beginning stage of an effective foundation for the SDGs. In 2015, it came to agreement by authorities during the 47th meeting of the UN Statistical Commission. The framework was only approved by ECO-SOC during its 70th meeting in 2016 through the report submitted by the Commission. So, in order to work towards all the 17 goals effectively, generating an indicator framework is crucial to measure progress of all countries involved. Under Sustainable Development Goals 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. As much as 5 targets and 8 indicators has been constructed as a guideline in tracking the momentum of all countries. According to the 2018 SDG Index and Dashboards report, Malaysia is riding on a downward trend in working towards achieving Goal 13, combating climate change. Okay, next I will explain more on the sub-indicator 13.1, that is to strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. Under 13.1, there's another 3 sub-indicators, that is, number of deaths, missing person and affected by disasters per 100,000 people. 13.1.2 is a number of countries with national and local risk reduction strategies. 13.1.3 is a proportion of local governments that adopt strategies in line with national towards disaster risk reduction. Indicator 13.1.1 measures the number of deaths, missing and whomever affected by natural disaster per 100,000 population in the world. Over the past decade, climate change has caused the happening of disaster to increase drastically. Moreover, the intensity of disaster is also happening at an alarming stage. On average, more than 100,000 lives have lost in conjunction of natural disaster every year. To avoid being the victim of natural disasters, it is important for Malaysia to establish actions to prevent and prepare in every aspect. So on 3rd October 2018, a bold move has been made by HSBC Amanah Malaysia Berhad to support SDGs. The company announced its launch of the world's first SDG Sukuk, which is an Islamic bond. All the proceeds from the Sukuks will be directed into the working capital in HSBC Amanah's Islamic banking business to fund projects in line with SDG bond framework. This move has caught the attention of the UN Development Programme (UNDP) administrator, as he praised that SDG Sukuk is an outstanding model of showing other business sectors how to create innovational strategies for achieving the goals. Next, indicator 13.1.2 signifies the engagement level of countries that comply and enforce different strategies to effectively reduce the risk of natural disaster. All the implementation of national strategies should be parallel with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction dated between 2015 to 2030. Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction was agreed by the UN General Assembly on March 18, 2015. It is the first large-scale deal agreed during the Third UN World Conference in 2015. It primarily aims at initiating disaster risk reduction oriented operation with cooperation not only from government but also with businesses, communities and individuals. On 19 October 2018, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad unveiled the plan of the revised 11th Malaysia Plan, which consists of the intention to combat climate change. In order to give more attention to the blueprint of climate change and reducing disaster risk effectively, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad labeled climate change and reducing disaster risk as the top 3 priority of the nation. Thus, the plan is classified under the 5th pillar of enhancing environmental sustainability through green growth. According to the plan, the government initiated 3 strategies under Priority Area C, which is primarily about fighting climate change and reducing disaster risk. Besides, the Malaysian government is committed to reduce the ratio of greenhouse gases to gross domestic product in the country by 2030 under the authorization of the Paris Agreement. Malaysia will also endorse the eminent Sendai Framework in the next decade as discussed above to act as a guidance for disaster risk management. Indicator 13.1.3 comprises of the capacity of cooperation given by local governments to implement strategies to reduce natural disaster in conjunction to the national strategies. The indicator measures how far local governments give support to initiate plans to reduce risk of disaster that is aligned with the national catastrophe risk reduction counteracts. To effectively achieve the optimal level of natural risk reduction, it is essential for governments to collaborate and hence make a bigger impact. During the special ASEAN Ministerial meeting on climate action, Singapore offered a package in combating climate change to ASEAN countries starting from 2018. Climate action package includes training program that aims to adapt and mitigate counteracts during sudden disasters. Furthermore, Singapore also affirmed its plan to the Southeast Asia Disaster Risk Insurance Facility that provides prompt financial help to cover emergency response expenditures during natural catastrophes for the countries involved in the national facility.
So I will continue my part with the target indicators. So the target 13.2 is integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning. The indicator is the number of the countries that have communicated the establishment or operationalization of an integrated policy or strategy or plan which increases their ability to adapt to the adverse impacts of the climate change and foster climate resilience and low greenhouse gas emissions development in a manner that does not threaten food production, including a national adaptation plan, nationally determined contribution, national communication, biennial update report or others. So under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, all parties shall formulate national programs containing measures to mitigate climate change and to facilitate the adequate adaptation while considering their common but differentiated the responsibilities and their specific objectives and circumstances. These policies and measures should be appropriate for the specific conditions of each party and should be integrated with national development programs. The convention established several processes which is to foster transparency and accountability of countries' actions to address climate change. So under Article 12, parties are asked to submit national inventories and national communications, which is NC, as to report on the implementation of the convention. The process to formulate and implement national adaptation plans also enables parties to identify medium and long-term adaptation needs and develop and implement strategies and programs to address those needs. The agreement, which is the Paris Agreement, builds upon the convention and brings all nations into a common cause to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt to its effects with enhanced support to assist developing countries to do so. As such, it charts a new course in the global climate effort. The Paris Agreement's central aim is to strengthen the global response to the threat of the climate change by keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Additionally, the agreement aims to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of the climate change. To reach these ambitious goals, appropriate financial flows, new technology framework, and enhanced capacity building framework will be put in place, thus supporting action by developing countries and most vulnerable countries in line with their own national objectives. The Paris Agreement requires each party to prepare, communicate and maintain successive nationally determined contributions that it intends to achieve. Parties shall pursue the domestic mitigation measures with the aim of achieving the objectives of such contributions. All parties should further strive to formulate and communicate long-term low greenhouse gas emissions development strategies to provide a context and integrated long-term view to their NDC. Also, each party should, as appropriate, submit and update periodically in adaptation communication, which may include priorities, implementation and support needs, plans and actions. The adaptation communication will be recorded in a public registry maintained by the Secretariat in order to provide a clear understanding of the climate change action and tracking of progress towards achieving parties' individual NDCs and adaptation actions. The Paris Agreements also establish an enhanced transparency framework for action and support, building on and enhancing the existing transparency agreements under the Convention.
Okay, now I will explain about target 13.3, which is improve education, awareness raising and human and institution capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction and early warning. Their indicator is number of nations that have integrated adaptation, impact reduction and early warning into primary, secondary, tertiary and curricular and mitigation. Okay, now I will proceed about climate change education. Women, youth and children in developing countries are suffering and will continue to suffer the worst impact of climate change. Climate change education must prepare them for facing the challenges of climate change in their everyday life, such as violent natural disaster, food and water scarcity, job security, and as. Hopefully, climate change education also prepare them for employment in climate change prevention and mitigation industrial and service sector. Above all, they should become advocates of lifestyle change from excessive to moderate consumption with respect to the scarce Earth's resources, thus reducing emission of greenhouse gases. Through the proficient use of social media, they will become the agents of change in their community for sustainable development. Responding to climate change involves two possible approaches, which is mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is reducing climate change. Involve reducing the flow of heat-trapping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, either by reducing sources of these gases, which is the burning of fossil for fuel of electricity, heat or transport, or enhancing the sinks that accumulated and store these gases, such as the ocean, forest and oil. The goal of mitigation is to avoid significant human interference with the climate system and stabilize greenhouse gas level in a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystem to adapt naturally to climate change, ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to proceed a sustainable manner. Okay, next, adaptation. Adaptation is adapting to life in a changing climate, involve adjusting to actual or expected future climate. The goal is to reduce vulnerability to the harmful effect of climate change, like sea level encouragement, more instant extreme weather, even or food insecurity. It also encompasses making the most of any potential beneficial opportunities associated with climate change. For example, longer growing season or increased yields in some regions. Okay, now I will continue with the policy implementing for this target. First is planning a special education program in both In both academical and training, this program will create impact on importance of solid waste management and avoid landfills. Secondly is install a model biogas plant for each and every education institution, every village, streets and various areas in the urban segment. That biogas plant will teach the importance of solid waste management, methane emission, production new renewable energy instead of conventional energy, such as like coal, petrol, diesel, natural gases. Okay, thirdly is another competition and award program to promote the new renewable energy area, especially biogas. In here, the major problem is solid waste management and landfill. Okay, lastly is publish the program details in the local media like newspaper, magazines, local TV channel and satellite channel to promote the climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction and create early warning.
As a conclusion, the Sustainable Development Goals (SDG) is a good shift and better opportunity for local and urban governments in leapfrog traditional development costs to more inclusive, economical, successful development and environmentally sustainable pathways. By shifting towards sustainable development, cities stand to augment not only their quality of life, but also to become captivate, investment hub and politicals to their own right. And climate is having discerning prominence on people's life and our planet's diversity of life. Oceans are heating and sea levels are inclining. The changing climate will seriously bargain food production in countries and regions that are already highly food uncertain if no action has been taken. So let's encourage ourselves to protect and ensure our environmental life of our planet.